The crowd roared as Ali stepped into the arena, the bright lights of Madison Square Garden bearing down on him like 1,000 suns. Blood pounded in his ears, drowning out the announcer's voice as he called out the fighters' names. Across the ring stood Victor Drago, 6 feet 4 inches of pure muscle and malice, his eyes cold as he stared Ali down. But Ali wasn't looking at Victor's eyes. He was looking at his gloves. Something was off about them, the slight discoloration around the knuckles barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't looking for it. Ali had been in this game for 15 years, and he knew when something wasn't right. "Keep it clean, gentlemen," the referee said, his voice betraying no hint that he too might be part of this setup. Ali had heard the whispers about Victor's last 3 opponents, how they'd collapsed after seemingly light punches, how one had developed mysterious symptoms after the fight. Now, as the first bell rang, Ali understood why. The first round was a dance, both men testing each other's defenses. Ali kept his distance, studying Victor's movements, the way he seemed to favor his right hand. When the first punch connected with Ali's shoulder, the burning sensation that spread across his skin confirmed his suspicions. There was something on those gloves, something that shouldn't be there. "What's wrong, champion?" Victor taunted, his Eastern European accent thick with mockery. "Afraid to come closer?" Ali said nothing, focusing on staying out of range while appearing to fight normally. He couldn't call out the cheating, not yet. The Drago family had too much influence with the boxing commission. 3 judges, 2 officials, and possibly even the referee were in their pocket. If Ali wanted justice, he'd need evidence, and he'd need to stay conscious long enough to get it. Between rounds, his coach Marcus leaned in close. "Something's wrong with his gloves, isn't it?" he whispered, pretending to administer water. Ali nodded almost imperceptibly. "Some kind of chemical. Burns on contact." Marcus's face hardened. "We need to end this. Throw in the towel." "No," Ali said firmly. "That's what they want. They've got millions riding on this fight. If I quit, they win. If you stay in, you could get seriously hurt," Marcus argued. "This isn't about pride, Ali." Ali looked past his coach to the front row where his daughter Amira sat, 10 years old and watching her father with wide, trusting eyes. Beside her sat Xavier Collins, Ali's old friend from their neighborhood days, now a famous problem solver known for working outside the system. Xavier had insisted on coming tonight, saying he had a bad feeling about the fight. Now Ali understood why. "It's not about pride," Ali said, his gaze locked on his daughter. "It's about showing her that cheaters never win." The bell rang, signaling the start of round 2. "Just be ready," Ali told Marcus cryptically as he stood up. The second round began with Victor pressing forward, more aggressive now. He'd expected Ali to be affected by whatever was on his gloves, to be weakened or disoriented. Instead, Ali moved with purpose, staying just out of range of Victor's power shots while landing quick jabs that, while not damaging, were starting to frustrate the bigger man. Ali caught Xavier's eye at the edge of the ring. His friend gave a subtle nod. He'd seen it too. Xavier discreetly lifted his phone, recording close-ups of Victor's gloves whenever the fighter came near that side of the ring. It wasn't much, but it might be enough if things went south. Then it happened. Victor landed a solid right hook to Ali's temple. The impact itself wasn't devastating, but the burning sensation that followed nearly brought Ali to his knees. His vision blurred and he stumbled back against the ropes. Victor moved in for the kill, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "Not so tough now, are you?" Victor growled, throwing another right hand that Ali barely managed to slip. The crowd was on their feet, sensing that the end might be near. Ali could hear Amira screaming his name, the fear in her voice cutting through the fog in his brain. Somehow, he survived until the bell. As he collapsed onto his stool, Marcus worked frantically to minimize the damage, applying ice to the side of Ali's face that felt like it was on fire. "Whatever he's using, it's getting worse," Ali gasped. "Like it activates with sweat or something." "I'm stopping this fight," Marcus said, reaching for the towel. Ali grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "No, I have a plan." He locked eyes with his coach. "Trust me, just one more round." As the bell rang for round 3, Ali saw doubt and worry in Marcus's eyes, but his coach nodded, respecting Ali's decision even if he didn't understand it. What no one knew was that during those brief seconds between rounds, Ali had made a decision that would change everything. The acid-like burn on Ali's temple had begun to spread, sending waves of pain through his head with each heartbeat. His left eye was starting to swell, limiting his vision, but he kept it carefully hidden from the referee. If the official saw the extent of the damage, he might stop the fight, and Ali couldn't let that happen. Not yet. Victor stalked him around the ring, growing more confident with each exchange. "You should have stayed down," he taunted, landing another body shot that sent fire spreading across Ali's ribs. "Pride will only make this worse." Ali backed away, circling to his right. To the crowd, to Victor, even to his own corner, it looked like he was fading. In reality, he was positioning himself exactly where he needed to be, in front of Xavier Collins. "You're nothing," Victor spat, pressing forward. "Your father was nothing too. That's why he lost to my father 30 years ago." The mention of his father sent a jolt through Ali's system. His father, once a promising heavyweight, had faced Victor's father Sergey in what should have been a career-defining fight. Instead, it had ended with his father hospitalized with strange symptoms that ended his career. The official story was that he'd suffered an allergic reaction to something in the venue, but Ali's family had always known the truth. Sergey Drago had cheated, just as his son was cheating now. "My father was 10 times the fighter yours was," Ali said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quieter arena. It was the first time he'd engaged with Victor's taunts, and the crowd sensed something changing in the dynamic of the fight. Victor laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. "Your father was weak. He cried like a baby when my father was done with him." Ali felt rage building inside him, but he channeled it, used it to sharpen his focus rather than cloud it. He needed to stay in control. The plan depended on it. From the corner of his good eye, he saw Xavier moving, positioning himself closer to the ring. In his hand was not just his phone, but something else. A small aerosol can, the kind used for air freshener or cleaning products. Whatever it was, Xavier was waiting for Ali's signal. "At least my father fought clean," Ali said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Can you say the same?" Victor's eyes narrowed, a flash of concern crossing his features. He glanced quickly at his corner, where his trainer Mikhail was watching with sudden intensity. "You talk too much," Victor growled, throwing a wild right hand that Ali slipped easily. Ali backed into the ropes, appearing cornered. Victor moved in for what he thought would be the finishing sequence. As he threw a straight right aimed at Ali's already damaged temple, Ali ducked lower than he had all fight. The punch sailed over his head, and Victor, overextended, stumbled forward. In that moment, Ali gave Xavier the signal, a quick tap of his glove against his own chest. Xavier reacted instantly, spraying the contents of his can directly onto Victor's gloves, as the fighter's momentum carried him against the ropes. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The substance on Victor's gloves began to smoke visibly, the chemical reaction revealing what had been invisible before. The crowd gasped. The referee, whether corrupt or not, couldn't ignore what was happening right in front of 20,000 witnesses and millions watching at home. "Stop! Stop the fight!" he shouted, stepping between the fighters. Victor looked down at his gloves in horror, then at his corner where Mikhail was already trying to slip away through the crowd. Panic replaced the confidence on the fighter's face as he realized what was happening. The next few minutes were chaos. Commission officials swarmed the ring. Doctors examined both fighters. Security detained Victor and his team before they could leave the arena. Throughout it all, Ali stood in his corner, Marcus supporting him as the adrenaline drained from his system, and the pain came roaring back. Xavier had made his way to ringside. Amira clutched protectively to his side. "You okay?" he called up to Ali. Ali nodded, though okay was a relative term at this point. The side of his face felt like it was on fire, and he suspected he'd need medical attention soon. But he'd survived, and more importantly, he'd exposed the truth. A boxing commission official approached, his face grave. "Mr. Hassan, we need to get you to a hospital immediately. The substance on Mr. Drago's gloves appears to be a caustic compound that—" "I know what it is," Ali interrupted. "It's the same thing his father used on my father." The official looked shocked. "You have proof of this?" Ali nodded toward Xavier, who held up his phone. "We do now, and I bet if you test my father's old gloves from that fight 30 years ago, you'll find traces of the same substance." As medical staff helped Ali out of the ring, the crowd rose to their feet, applauding his courage. Reporters surged forward, questions flying, cameras flashing. Through it all, Ali kept his eyes on Amira, whose face showed both fear and pride as she watched her father. "Did we win?" she asked when Ali finally reached her, leaning heavily on the paramedic supporting him. Ali managed to smile despite the pain. "Not yet, sweetheart, but we will." What he didn't know was how right he was, and how much the fight was about to change, not just for him, but for the entire sport. 3 weeks later, Ali sat in his apartment, watching the press conference on television. The side of his face was still bandaged, the chemical burns healing slowly but surely. The doctors had assured him there would be minimal scarring, but the damage to his career was less certain. At 35, time was already against him. Add in recovery time from chemical burns, and many were questioning if Ali Hassan would ever fight again. Not that it mattered much at the moment. The entire boxing world was focused on the scandal that had erupted following his fight with Victor Drago. The substance on Victor's gloves had been identified as a chemical compound that caused inflammatory reactions on contact and intensified with moisture, like sweat. Further investigation had revealed similar compounds present in gloves from at least 5 previous Drago fights, including the infamous bout with Ali's father 30 years earlier. The Boxing Commission had suspended Victor indefinitely. His father, Sergey, was facing a lifetime ban from the sport, even as a spectator. Most significantly, criminal charges were being considered against both men, as well as against several officials who had been complicit in the cheating. "The integrity of this sport is paramount," the commission chairman was saying on the screen. "The evidence provided by Mr. Hassan and Mr. Collins has revealed a pattern of behavior that strikes at the very heart of competitive athletics. We will not rest until all responsible parties are held accountable." Ali muted the television as his phone rang. It was Xavier. "You watching this circus?" his friend asked without preamble. "Yeah," Ali replied. "Hard to believe it's actually happening." "Believe it," Xavier said. "The evidence was irrefutable once we knew what to look for. The Dragos' entire empire is crumbling." Ali should have felt vindication, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, he felt strangely hollow. It doesn't change what happened to my father. Doesn't give him back the career he should have had. No, Xavier agreed solemnly. But it does mean he was right all along. Everyone who called him crazy, who said he was making excuses, they know the truth now. There was some comfort in that. Ali's father had spent years trying to prove that something illegal had happened in that fight, only to be dismissed as a sore loser. He died 3 years ago, his reputation still tarnished in the boxing community. At least now his name would be cleared. A knock at the door interrupted Ali's thoughts. "I gotta go, X, someone's here." "That'll be your surprise," Xavier said cryptically before hanging up. Confused, Ali made his way to the door, moving carefully to avoid aggravating his injuries. When he opened it, he found himself face to face with Jordan Mitchell, the current heavyweight champion of the world. "Mitchell," Ali said, surprised. They weren't enemies, but they weren't friends either. As the top 2 contenders in the division, they'd been circling each other for years. A super fight always rumored but never materialized. "Hassan," Mitchell nodded, his expression unreadable. "Can I come in?" Ali stepped aside, letting the champion enter his modest apartment. Mitchell looked around, taking in the simple furnishings, the boxing memorabilia on the walls, the framed photo of Ali with his father and daughter. "Nice place," Mitchell said, though Ali could tell he was just being polite. "What brings you here?" Ali asked, getting straight to the point. "Bit far from your usual hangouts." Mitchell hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically unsure of himself. "I've been watching everything that's happened with Drago with the commission investigation." "Join the club," Ali said dryly. "The whole world's watching." "Yeah, but the whole world didn't have a title fight scheduled against Drago next month," Mitchell replied. "I did, and now I'm realizing that if you hadn't exposed him, I might have been his next victim." The admission clearly cost Mitchell something in pride. The champion was known for his confidence bordering on arrogance. Acknowledging that he might have been vulnerable wasn't in character. "You might have beaten him anyway," Ali said, surprised to find himself offering comfort to a rival. Mitchell shook his head. "Maybe, but the point is I shouldn't have had to worry about chemical warfare in a boxing match." He paused. "What you did took guts. You could have just quit, claimed injury, lived to fight another day. Instead, you put yourself on the line to expose the truth." Ali shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I did what anyone would do. No, Mitchell said firmly. You did what most people wouldn't do, including me, probably. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an official-looking document. That's why I'm here. I want to give you this. Allie took the paper, scanning it quickly. It was a contract for a title fight. Mitchell versus Hassan, 3 months from now at Madison Square Garden. You'll be healed by then, Mitchell said, and you deserve the shot, not just because of the Drago thing, but because you've earned it in the ring. Should have happened a year ago, if we're being honest. Allie stared at the contract, emotions warring inside him. This was everything he'd worked for, a chance at the heavyweight championship. But after what he'd been through, did he really want to step back into the ring? Did he want to risk his health, his future, for a sport that had allowed corruption to fester for decades? As if reading his thoughts, Mitchell added, I know you might be having doubts about continuing, but think about it. What better way to change the sport than from the top? 2 clean fighters facing off for the biggest prize in boxing. Setting an example. Allie looked up from the contract, studying Mitchell's face. There was sincerity there that surprised him. Plus, Mitchell continued with a hint of his usual cockiness, I need someone credible to beat, or my legacy won't mean much. Right now, you're the most respected name in boxing. Allie couldn't help but laugh at that. At least you're honest about your motivations. Mitchell grinned. Always have been. So what do you say? One more fight for all the marbles? Before Allie could answer, the door opened and Amira burst in, back from her after-school program. She stopped short when she saw Mitchell, her eyes widening in recognition. You're Jordan Mitchell, she said, awestruck. The champion. Mitchell's demeanor softened immediately. And you must be Amira. Your dad talks about you all the time in interviews. Are you going to fight my dad? She asked bluntly, looking between the 2 men. Mitchell glanced at Allie, letting him field the question. Allie knelt down to his daughter's level, wincing slightly at the pull on his healing wounds. That's what we're discussing, sweetheart. Champion Mitchell has offered me a title shot. Amira's face lit up, then quickly fell. But you got hurt. The doctors said you need to rest. I'll be fully recovered before the fight would happen, Allie assured her. But I haven't decided yet if I'm going to accept. Amira considered this seriously, with all the gravity a 10-year-old could muster. Is he a cheater too? She asked in a stage whisper that Mitchell could clearly hear. The champion surprised Ali by kneeling down as well, putting himself at Amira's eye level. No, I'm not a cheater. I promise you that. And if your dad and I fight, it will be fair and square. Just 2 athletes testing their skills against each other. The way it should be. Amira studied him intently, then nodded, apparently satisfied. Then I think you should fight him, Dad, she declared. And win. Mitchell laughed, standing back up. She's got confidence, I'll give her that. Ali rose as well, his decision made. She gets it from her father, he said, extending his hand. You've got a deal, champion. As they shook hands, Ali felt something he hadn't experienced since before the Drago fight. Hope. Not just for himself, but for the sport he loved, for his father's legacy, and for the example he was setting for his daughter. The real fight, the one that mattered most, had already been won the moment he'd chosen integrity over an easy exit. Whatever happened next was just the next chapter in a story that had suddenly become much larger than one boxer's career. The roar of the crowd was deafening as Ali made his way toward the ring, an ocean of camera flashes illuminating his path. Madison Square Garden was packed to capacity. 20,000 fans on their feet, millions more watching around the world. This wasn't just a heavyweight championship fight. It was the most anticipated boxing match in decades. 3 months had transformed Ali from contender to folk hero. The burns on his face had healed, leaving only a faint scar along his temple that somehow added to his mystique. Interviews, talk shows, even a congressional hearing on corruption in professional sports. Ali had handled it all with a dignity that earned him respect far beyond the boxing community. The scandal had rocked the sport to its foundation. 5 officials had been permanently banned. 2 previous championship results had been overturned. Most significantly, Ali's father had been posthumously vindicated. His loss to Sergei Drago 30 years ago officially changed to a no contest due to illegal tactics. Ali touched the black armband he wore in his father's memory as he climbed the steps to the ring. "This one's for you, Dad," he whispered. Xavier Collins waited at the top of the steps, pulling the rope apart to let Ali through. "You ready for this?" his friend asked, his voice barely audible over the crowd. Ali nodded. "More ready than I've ever been." Xavier clasped his shoulder. "Remember what we talked about? Mitchell's right hook comes from a lower angle than you're used to. Watch for it in the middle rounds when you start to drop your guard." "I've got it," Ali assured him. Xavier had been integral to his preparation, analyzing Mitchell's previous fights with the same attention to detail that had helped expose the Dragos. Across the ring, Mitchell was completing his own entrance, his championship belt held high above his head. The champion looked confident as always, but there was a new respect in his eyes when he locked gazes with Ali. They both knew this wasn't just another fight. It was a new beginning for boxing itself. In the front row, Amira sat between Marcus and Ali's mother, waving a homemade sign that read, "My dad's the best." The sight filled Ali with determination. He'd promised her he would win, not just for himself, but to show her that doing the right thing, even when it's the hard thing, ultimately leads to victory. The referee called both fighters to the center of the ring for final instructions. Mitchell and Ali touched gloves, a gesture of mutual respect that felt more genuine than the obligatory tap usually exchanged before a fight. "Let's give them something to remember," Mitchell said quietly. "Clean fight, all the way through," Ali replied. The bell rang, and both men moved to their corners, readying themselves for the battle ahead. As Ali turned to face the champion, he felt a strange calm settle over him. The pressure, the expectations, the millions watching, none of it mattered now. This was just boxing, the pure sport he'd fallen in love with as a boy watching his father train. The first round began cautiously, both fighters measuring distance, respecting each other's power. Ali established his jab early, keeping Mitchell at range while the champion looked for openings to unleash his fearsome combinations. It was technical, tactical, the chess match that precedes the war in every great boxing contest. By round 3, the pace had quickened. Mitchell landed a heavy right that momentarily buckled Ali's knees, drawing gasps from the crowd. But Ali recovered quickly, countering with a crisp 3-punch combination that forced Mitchell to retreat. Both men were breathing harder now, sweat glistening on their bodies under the bright lights. "You hit harder than I expected," Mitchell acknowledged during a clinch. "You haven't seen anything yet," Ali replied. The middle rounds belonged to Mitchell. The champion found his rhythm in the 5th, catching Ali with that right hook Xavier had warned about. Ali weathered the storm, but he was clearly behind on the scorecards as they entered the 7th round. In his corner, Marcus worked frantically to close a cut that had opened above Ali's left eye. "You're letting him dictate the pace," his coach admonished. "You need to take control." "I'm waiting for him to tire," Ali explained between deep breaths. "He's putting everything into these punches. By round 10, he'll have nothing left." Marcus looked skeptical but trusted his fighter's instincts. "Your call, but don't wait too long." As the fight entered its championship rounds, 10, 11, and 12, Ali's strategy began to pay dividends. Mitchell's punches, while still dangerous, had lost some of their snap. His movements were fractionally slower, his breathing more labored. Ali, meanwhile, seemed to find a second wind, pressing forward with combinations that repeatedly found their mark. The crowd sensed the momentum shift, the chants for Ali growing louder with each exchange. Even Mitchell's most devoted fans had to acknowledge the heart Ali was showing, fighting back from behind on the scorecards, refusing to concede defeat. With 1 minute left in the final round, Ali cornered Mitchell against the ropes. The champion covered up, trying to weather the assault, but Ali's punches were coming from all angles, too many to block. A left hook to the body created the opening Ali had been waiting for. As Mitchell's guard dropped slightly to protect his ribs, Ali launched the punch nobody saw coming, a perfectly timed right uppercut that caught the champion flush on the chin. Mitchell's legs went stiff, then rubbery. He teetered for a moment, fighting to stay upright through sheer willpower. Another fighter might have rushed in wildly for the finish, but Ali was patient, picking his shots carefully. 3 more precision punches and Mitchell slumped to the canvas, the referee jumping between them to begin the count. 1, 2, 3. The crowd counted along, the arena shaking with their combined voices. Mitchell struggled to his knees at 6, using the ropes to pull himself up by 8. He nodded to the referee that he was able to continue, but his eyes were unfocused, his legs unsteady. With just 15 seconds left in the fight, Ali could have rushed in to finish him. Instead, he approached cautiously, touched gloves with the wounded champion in a gesture of respect, then simply controlled the final moments with his jab, ensuring his victory on the scorecards even if Mitchell managed to survive until the bell. When the final bell rang, the arena erupted. Ali raised his hands in victory, emotion overwhelming him as the reality of what he'd accomplished began to sink in. Mitchell approached him, wrapping him in a hug of genuine admiration. "You earned it," the now former champion said. "Wear it with honor." The official decision was a formality. All three judges had Ali winning, two of them by just a single point, showing how close the contest had been until that final round. As the announcer declared a new heavyweight champion of the world, the crowd's reaction nearly drowned out Ali's name. The belt felt heavier than Ali had imagined as it was strapped around his waist. He sought out Amira in the crowd, finding her jumping up and down with joy, tears streaming down her face. Xavier stood nearby, nodding in satisfaction, while Marcus openly wept with pride. When the microphone was thrust in front of Ali for the customary post-fight interview, the new champion took a moment to compose himself. "First, I want to thank Jordan Mitchell for a clean, fair fight between two athletes at the top of their game. That's what this sport should always be about." Mitchell, still in the ring, acknowledged the praise with a respectful nod. "Second, I want to dedicate this victory to my father, who taught me that integrity matters more than any title or paycheck. He didn't live to see this moment, but everything I am as a fighter and as a man, I owe to him." Ali paused, his eyes finding Amira in the crowd again. "And to my daughter, this is what I wanted to show you, that sometimes doing the right thing means taking the hardest path, that standing up for the truth might cost you in the short term, but character and courage always win in the end." The interviewer asked about Ali's future plans, but the new champion wasn't ready to look that far ahead. "Tonight, I'm just going to enjoy this moment with the people I love. Tomorrow will take care of itself." As Ali exited the ring, championship belt secured around his waist, the crowd parted to let him through. Hands reached out to touch him, voices called his name, but all Ali could see was Amira rushing toward him. He knelt down, ignoring the protests of his battered body, and wrapped his daughter in a tight embrace. "You did it, Dad," she exclaimed, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "You're the champion!" Ali held her close, realizing that of all his accomplishments, exposing the cheating, vindicating his father, winning the title, nothing meant more than the lesson he'd taught his daughter. That integrity matters, that truth prevails, that sometimes the most powerful punch is the one nobody sees coming, the courage to stand up for what's right no matter the cost. "We did it," he corrected her gently. "We're both champions now." As he stood, Amira's hand firmly in his, Ali Hassan looked out at the cheering crowd and felt something beyond pride or satisfaction. He felt peace. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, he would face them as he had faced everything else, with integrity, with courage, and with the knowledge that the most important victories aren't won in the ring, but in the choices we make when the world is watching.